Hey there, welcome back to another video. This time around, it is my review of the 1995 erotic drama film, Showgirls. Now, Showgirls is one of those films that's rather infamous. It was an infamous critical and financial flop when it came out in 1995, but it's also a film that has gotten a pretty significant cult following over the years as well. So it's a movie that was famous for being a flop, but then got an extra amount of fame later on as a cult favorite. And because of that, I've been really fascinated with this film, and I was really intrigued about watching it, but I just never really got around to putting it on until recently. And I can't say that this is one of my favorite films, and I'm definitely not going to be one of those people that's going to really say that the critics were completely wrong about this one. But I will say this: it was entertaining. It was a total train wreck at points, but it was a rather enjoyable wreck to watch. It's one of those movies where I can see what the writer and the director were trying to do with it, but I don't think it really worked out as well as either of them intended it to. It's one of a kind for sure, but in the way where it's just a total trash fest. It is honestly what you might consider to be elevated trash. You know what a lot of people call some horror films today, from A24, they call them elevated horror. Well, Showgirls might have been the first ever elevated trash movie. Now, before I get around to sharing more of my thoughts on Showgirls, I would like to give a special shout out to Vontae for requesting this video. And if there is another film, TV show, or topic that you would like to see me discuss in the future, feel free to donate to either my PayPal, my Patreon, or my Cash App. The link to all three is in the video description down below, and I will try to get to your request as soon as I possibly can. Now, Showgirls is directed by Paul Verhoeven, who is honestly one of my favorite filmmakers. He's directed such classics like RoboCop and Total Recall and Basic Instinct, and also films like Showgirls. Now, a lot of people consider this to be like the lowest point of his career, and I can see where some are coming from. And this is definitely not one of my favorite films that Verhoeven has done, but I do not think that he did a bad job directing this at all. The same signature style that Verhoeven is known for, his over the top sensibilities, his way of really utilizing the camera to showcase the extreme, is still prevalent here. This is still a director who is at the peak of their game. I mean, after Showgirls, he did Starship Troopers. So he definitely had not lost his touch. And this was something a little bit different for Paul. I mean, you could say Basic Instinct had some similar elements visually to Showgirls. So it wasn't something that was completely out of left field for Paul, but it was still something that was a little bit not of the norm for him. And I think he handled a lot of the other aspects of the film that weren't necessarily what Paul was known for pretty well. His framing was once again fantastic and absolutely fabulous. His usage of camera angles and pans and zooms and other camera techniques was tremendous. Uh, I don't agree with critics at the time who tried to argue that Paul Verhoeven's direction was bad. I don't know what film you're watching. This is not a poorly directed movie by any means. Paul still had it, and he was still giving it his all, and he really did a lot to elevate this film, because this is one of those movies where, because of the fact that there's so many things that are working against it, if you didn't have a director like Paul Verhoeven behind the camera, this really would have been something that would have been relegated to the dustbins of history, to be honest. It would just been another forgettable box office flop from the 90s. But because Paul Verhoeven is the director, and he has such a really great sense of style, and he injects the film with so much vivacious and vivid flair, and the extreme uh, um, type of filmmaking that he's known for, it really makes for a very unique looking film, and a movie that at points is honestly quite jaw dropping as well as visually enticing. Now, I know he's gotten a lot of criticism for the way that he shot the dance scenes or the scenes that were supposed to be more erotic, because I remember reading some reviews from back in the day, uh, and a lot of the critics were talking about how the sex scenes or the dance scenes with the nudity and everything was not erotic, and that was clearly intentional. Paul Verhoeven was trying to show the sleaziness, the seediness of Vegas, and also Showgirls, and the whole erotic dancing. He was trying to show that it's not erotic, that it's the opposite, and the direction reflects that. Now, when it comes to other sequences that are just pure spectacle, he's just spectacular. Like, his direction is stupendous and just as amazing as any of the other films that he directed before this. So, yeah, I think that from a pure directing standpoint, Showgirls is great. Verhoeven's direction is really good. So I think even if it's a film that doesn't sound like something that would be necessarily your cup of tea, if you are a fan of Verhoeven, you should definitely see this at least once. Now, Showgirls was written by Joe Esterhaus, and this was around the time when Joe Esterhaus was considered to be like the name, like one of the biggest names in the industry when it comes to a screenwriter. And I think there was like a bidding war with his script, and there was all this stuff going on, and this was right after he had a lot of success with some other films, so he had a proven track record at this point. And so his involvement with this was a big deal. Esther Hos is known for very over the top, in your face screenplays and stories that are almost to the point of parody. And this is clearly intended to be a satire, a satirical take on the American dream or A Star is Born. And I think in some ways, Esther Haas's script really does work as a satire of those two things, but it fails in other ways that really do make the film as a whole not really the best. not really something that you wanna defend that vehemently, and something that, while it's interesting and it does have its merits, there's a lot of elements of this script that really don't work. They might titillate you. They might leave a impression in a different way than Esther Hos intended, or in some ways exactly the way that he intended them to. But there's a lot of this screenplay that I think is either lost in translation or is just not very well put together. It's too bare at points. Like, it legitimately is too bare at points when it comes to some very key aspects of what I consider to be a good story, let alone a good screenplay. I don't necessarily have a problem with the sheer number of unlikable characters like other critics and other people have had with this script, because I think there's still a couple characters in this film and in this story that I could either connect with or care about. So it wasn't one of those things where everybody was unlikable. Molly is a character that I definitely felt for. She seemed to be a good person for the most part. She wasn't that corrupted by Vegas and by everything that was going on around her. She wasn't perfect. She had her flaws, but she wasn't what I would consider to be a unlikable character. Even Nomi, as much crap as Nomi gets, even after she wound up getting to live her dream based on some shady behavior on her part that was downright murderous and vindictive, she still drew a line in the sand and gave all of that up to get justice for her friend Molly. So there's still a certain amount of integrity with her character. So she isn't just completely unlikable and evil and bad. But there's a lot of characters in this that are just bad people. Crystal, Zach, uh, and what's crazy is you have people like Al, who's this guy who's essentially a pimp for all these strippers. And he actually turns out to be like a more likable, uh, down to earth guy than some of these other people that are involved with Nomi and her life and her attempts to try to make it big. Of course, you have a lot of stuff with a lot of things with Glenn Plummer's character. Um, uh, James, who is this guy who I think he was like at the club, and then he ultimately became this love interest, and it just didn't really work. So that's definitely one aspect of the script that I felt honestly kind of sucked. This whole off and on love story between James and Nomi. I don't know what Joe was doing with that. I think he was trying to set up something where, Glenn's a dancer and he wrote a song for Nomi and they were gonna do a dance number, but then he cheated on her and then they broke up, but then there's still this kind of will they won't they thing going on, and I don't really feel that worked at all because I didn't buy that they were attracted to one another. I didn't buy that they were a couple. It just felt like padding and filler. And really, I feel the whole stuff with Crystal and the rivalry between her and Nomi needed to be built up more, and so did the character that Kyle MacLachlan played in Zach. Cut out the whole Glenn Plummer, James Smith thing. That really didn't add anything to the movie, if you asked me. And it wasn't that interesting. And just focus more on the Gina Gershon, Elizabeth Berkley dynamic, and maybe give Molly a little bit more depth and a little bit more to do as well. And I think that really would have improved the overall script. And I do agree with other critics who have pointed out that the film doesn't really have a lot of tension. So at points it can get kind of dull despite all the nudity and all the debauchery and all the over the top dialogue and all of this other stuff going on in the movie. It could still get kind of dull because there's not a lot of tension other than Nomi making it big and finding a way to become a showgirl. Because other than that, you're kind of like, all right, I don't really care about the whole relationship between her and James. And you don't really get a lot of Crystal in terms of her dynamic with Nomi until I think over halfway into the movie. You get some fun stuff with Molly and Nomi bonding. I don't mind the way that things open and also end when it comes to the script, where it starts with this uh, moment where Nomi hitchhikes and gets picked up by this guy in a truck, and then he starts trying to put the moves on her, and she pulls out a knife and then gets out, but then he takes her luggage and she's desperate, and that's when she ultimately runs into Molly, and Molly lets her stay with her, and they become friends. And then by the end of the movie, she winds up hitchhiking again and then runs into the same guy and pulls a knife on him and is like, "Hey, where's my luggage?" Like, I liked that opening and ending. Like it was poetic in a way, and just a fun way to open the film and also end it. Like the opening had tension. It grabbed you pretty much right away, and then it was building the characters, showing the goddess show, doing all this other stuff, and it kind of started to get bogged down a little bit and get a bit slow because there really wasn't a lot of tension going on other than Nomi finding work and Nomi finding a way to become a showgirl because she got work as a stripper at the Cheetah's Gentlemen's Club, and then she has these big dreams of being a dancer. So then ultimately she gets that opportunity via the Goddess show and doing the audition. And there are some other characters in the script that Joe writes and does feature in the film, like some of the other strippers who have different types of personalities and their own kind of charm, and the other dancers who are a part of the Goddess show in Vegas. But there's not a lot of depth to any of them. Like they're very limited in terms of their depth. They're very paper thin. And even Nomi, like there's this sense of mystery with her character in terms of like who she is and what she's hiding and why is she having to hitchhike all over the place. Why is she in this position? And you don't really get a lot of answers until basically the end of the movie when you find out her real name and that she has a really long rap sheet, and that is something that adds some intrigue and throws some questions at the audience throughout the story as it unfolds, but it's not something that's really a constant a bit of tension. You don't really get that until Molly gets assaulted by this rock star, and then Nomi decides to essentially sacrifice her career that she got by sacrificing Crystal to the Vegas gods by knocking her down the stairs and having her be put on the shelf. And as soon as she gets this big role that she's been wanting this entire time, her friend gets sexually assaulted by this rock star, and she decides to just throw it all away and beat the ever loving shit out of this guy. It's a crowd pleasing moment, and it does help Nomi's character feel like somebody who isn't just this completely shallow, selfish, and soulless character. It doesn't necessarily excuse all the other stuff that she did before that particular moment, but it does make her into a character that does have some kind of moral sense and has some kind of integrity, but that doesn't really happen until way, way, way into the movie. And by the time you get all of that, she takes the guy out. She then goes on the run again. The movie's basically over. So I really feel the script should have had an extra bit of tension, whether it's more little hints at her identity and who she was, or who she actually is, or more of this back and forth and this backstabbing going on between her and Crystal. Or like Verhoeven himself actually mentioned, I think in an interview, a murder case, something that provides the audience with more to think about than just whether or not Nomi winds up being able to uh, win the audition and become a part of the goddess cast the on stage at this Vegas show, and whether or not she can thrust her way to stardom. Like, that is just something that only works for a certain amount of time. It's not strong enough to carry such a weighty and long film. Like, this is a really long movie. So you need to have something that's more substantial, something that you can grab onto, that's a little bit more, that's not so skimpy. Uh that provides a little bit more coverage and the overall ability to be able to hold such a massive an epic story. I think beefing up some of these side characters definitely would have helped, but that is not enough in itself. But the script still has some things about it that are genuinely endearing at points, like the friendship between Nomi and Molly. And it's one of those screenplays where there's a lot of dialogue and there's a lot of moments in it that I think are just unintentionally hilarious and comedy gold. But then there's other moments that I genuinely feel are intended to be funny. The dialogue is intended to be something that you laugh at. It's not supposed to be something that you take seriously. But because of the fact that there are so many moments with the dialogue and with the way the film is shot and the way that some scenes play out and the way that some actors or actresses play their roles, it's hard to really pinpoint exactly what the tone of this script and this story is and this entire film is. So there's moments where the tone is just kind of whipping all over the place, almost as much as Elizabeth Berkley does when it comes to her very awkward and strange dancing throughout the film. So it's one of those screenplays where I understand why people think it's bad, but I don't think it's necessarily as bad as people make it out to be. It's hella flawed. It's a very flawed screenplay with a lot of things that don't work, but there's some gems there. There's some genuine diamonds in this script. I think the balls to actually have that scene involving the rock star brutally assaulting one of the main characters is definitely something that's a bit of tonal whiplash, but I think it adds an extra amount of visceral edge to the movie that helps the overall story stand out more. And I think it could have used a little bit more of that, to be honest. It's one of those weird films where, despite it being NC-17, it almost feels like it could have been even edgier. It could have gone even further than it actually does, which is crazy to say about a movie that's rated NC-17. But at the end of the day, I still think it's an okay screenplay by Joe Esther Hos. I think it's fine, but it had potential to be something fantastic, and it just doesn't really reach that full potential in the end. Now, the cast for Showgirls, it's interesting. I think there's a lot of talent here, but I don't really think it all gels together. And I think there are a lot of performances in this film that either leave a lot to be desired or aren't really giving their all. There are some that, in my opinion, are worthy of being put on a billboard in Vegas, but there's a lot that are just kind of there or are shockingly bad. And when your lead performer in Elizabeth Berkley is delivering a performance that is just so awkward and strange and stiff and stilted and weird and genuinely awful. It's it's really hard for this film to be something great or even something that is considered to be that good overall. Is a kind of movie though, but where, because the performance is so trashy and so over the top and so bad, there's a certain enjoyment out of watching Elizabeth Berkley's performance in this that it becomes so bad it's good. Like it really is legitimately one of those performances to me. It's almost like the female equivalent of Tommy Wiseau in The Room at points. I do feel Berkeley got way too much backlash for her role in this. I mean, it's not a good performance. It's bad. It's at points beyond bad. But there's a certain aspect to it that's honestly kind of mesmerizing, and it's genuinely entertaining, despite how bad it is. And you can't say that she did not go for it. She let it all out. She let it all hang out, and then some. So because of the fact that she went that hard, honestly, I respect that. Gina Gershon, I genuinely thought that she was great as Crystal. It's really one of my favorite performances from her. She really embraced the mean girl cattiness of this character, and she's a lot of fun to watch as a result. Kyle MacLachlan, I love him as an actor. He felt honestly out of place here. It was just a very strange bit of casting. And I don't think he was really the right fit. It's not a bad performance, but I just don't buy him as like a guy who is a part of this Vegas sleaze machine. Like McLaclin, I think is a really accomplished, really amazing actor in his own right, but I just didn't buy him as the guy who's sleazing around and sleeping with all the women and doing all this other stuff. Like it just didn't really fit for him. I didn't buy him as that kind of villain. He tried. Maybe if the script was better and his character had more depth and there was more scenes with him that really established his character more, maybe that would have worked. But really, my lasting impression of him is some really uncomfortable sex scenes with Kyle MacLachlan. The scene when he's getting the most intense lap dance you will ever see in your entire life with him and Elizabeth Berkley, or the pool scene where they're having sex in the pool. Like, other than that, like, there's not really much else about Kyle MacLachlan's performance as Zach that really sticks with you. And it's crazy because it's Kyle MacLachlan we're talking about. He's one of the more unique actors out there, and he just kind of blends in. Glenn Plummer as James, I don't blame him. His character was written very poorly, and I don't think any actor would have made that character work. Robert Davi, great casting as Al, and he was only in it for a little bit, but I felt he definitely made the most out of what he had to work with. But honestly, I think you should have switched the role, like switch things around. I buy Robert Davi more as Zach Carey than Kyle MacLachlan. Like that felt like a better fit for me. Um, The rest of the supporting cast is okay. Like Alan Rachins is Tony, Gina Ravera is Molly, Lynn Tucci is Mama Bazoom, um, Rena Riffle is Penny. But to be honest, Rena Riffle was nice to look at, but her acting was atrocious. Um, but I don't think she was cast for her acting, to be perfectly honest. But yeah, it's a cast that I mean, I will mention Gina Ravera again because I think she was, other than Gina Gershon, the best performer out of the cast who had a lot of screen time. That was probably the most a difficult role in the film, and she did some really great work overall with that particular role and with that character. Now, the film features cinematography by Jost Vacano, and it's a really nice looking movie. It's glitzy, it's glamorous, it's great. It looks like something that you could see uh, showcased pretty prominently on the Vegas Strip. Like it really has that Vegas look and feel to it and size and scope, but it also has moments that are very seedy and very sleazy, but also steamy. It's a kind of movie where visually it really is quite an eye-catching film to watch when it comes to the way that scenes are lit, when it comes to just the overall look of the film, and a good part of that is due to Yos Vacano and his cinematography. Another reason why the film is so striking visually is because of the editing by Mark Goldblatt and Mark Helfrich. Those are two really, really strong editors. Like editors who have a long track record of editing some really great movies. Like Mark Goldblatt is one of the best editors, in my opinion, that's ever worked in the industry. And Helfrich is not that far off. So you have both of those editors. Yeah, you get a film that has some really tight, some really tremendous, some really special editing that definitely also elevate the overall film because of just how great of a talent these two editors are. The music is by David A. Stewart, and it's showy, which is exactly what you want out of a film called Showgirls. And I think there's some pieces of the music that definitely kind of stick with you and are somewhat memorable, but there's nothing iconic about the score. I definitely feel the costume design and the art direction and the production design is more iconic and genuinely more incredible than the score. I think I don't remember if there's a lot of licensed music in the film or not. I think there might be a little bit, but I think a lot of it's just has a lot of Vegas show tunes, which is exactly what Showgirls is, so it fits. That's exactly what they're trying to do. There are some licensed tracks now that I think about it. Like there's one at the end, and I think there's might be one earlier on, and the songs were fine, but they weren't anything like amazing. So the soundtrack isn't really something that I would say is like a massive standout, but it works. It works for the film. It fits it fine at the end of the day. It's not too ill-fitting. There's not a lot of wardrobe malfunction, so to speak, going on because the music doesn't really fit the scene and things are kind of popping out. You don't really get that. The film, to me, it definitely does suffer from some pacing issues, sags in the middle, definitely needed a little more support, and there's some other portions of it that aren't really that great or honestly kind of stumbling around and tripping over its heels. I was still for the most part entertained by it, at least for uh this first time viewing. It's not a film that I would probably watch again anytime soon though, because of so many things about it that just don't really work that well for me. But I didn't hate it. I know it's a divisive film, and I know there's a lot of people who really don't like the movie at all. And I understand why. But I still liked the movie. I still liked Showgirls. But I definitely felt like there was a much better movie that never really got a chance to take center stage. Yeah, that's my thoughts on Showgirls. And as always, thanks for watching, and I'll see you later. See ya.